As DJ Reader has taken a 2-year deal with the Detroit Lions, the Bengals are looking for his replacement actively, in addition to a starting right tackle. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Lisco. He's your host, James Rapine. We've got you covered this Bengals free agency on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And today we unfortunately have to get into the departure of DJ Reader, one of my favorite Bengals of all time in his short tenure in Cincinnati. In fact, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel, where you can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And James, while DJ Reader has taken a 2-year deal with Detroit, the details of that deal tell you a little bit about what was going on with his negotiations with the Bengals. It's hardly more money than they gave to Sheldon Rankins, and reportedly just about $9 million of those dollars guaranteed. Seems like both of these teams, the Detroit Lions and Cincinnati Bengals, had injury concerns with DJ Reader, and that reflects in the offer he ends up taking, because you kind of know that the offer he ended up taking is more money than the Bengals put on the table for him.
Well, sure, it was. And I think the longer this went on, the dilemma for certainly on social media, right? Of is he going to get on the plane? Is he going to go to Detroit? All of those things. Yesterday kind of felt like, oh yeah, he's going to go to Detroit. And the Bengals, they're working behind the scenes on other things. And as we record this, I'm at Paycor Stadium. Teair Tart's in the building, and Sheldon Rankins is agreed to a signed deal, a 2-year deal for $26 million, like you mentioned. So you just read the tea leaves, and it didn't seem like they were blocking the plane. He was going to make it to Detroit. They signed Sheldon Rankins, or agreed to terms on Wednesday night, and Teair Tart's in the building on Thursday. This kind of felt inevitable by the time it was announced, and they introduced multiple signings today, and that's why we're down here. But yeah, I think the injury is serious. And while I hope DJ is DJ when he gets back, there's reason for concern, and I get it. And if the Bengals would have signed him, I would have been excited about it, because it's DJ Reader, and you're right, he's a big part of this team and awesome to talk to, and obviously he's had a ton of success on the field. At the same time, our last show, we talked about this. What would you rather have? The Rankins Teair Tart combo or DJ Reader? Now, we know the money is much more similar and comparable, so that's interesting too. But it also means that there's probably more concern injury-wise, health-wise, than maybe we even let on, because everything's rosy when you're rehabbing, and it's different when you're talking about actual dollars. And I think that's what we're seeing in his deal, and that's why Detroit only guaranteed $9 million.
Yeah, it seems very possible that they're paying for part of this year, and if he gets through the rest of this year healthy and contributes for them at a high level the way we know DJ Reader can, he'll see that second year of that deal and he'll cash in on the rest of it. And I wonder what the structure will be. That will be very interesting if it's a $9 million signing bonus and a relatively meager salary, smaller salary in that first year to keep the cap hit low, because that could be the case. I mean, this could be, if it's $9 million guaranteed and it's a $9 million signing bonus, that year one cash could be minimal. I assume DJ would want year one cash, but again, if he had to take a discount because of that injury, it could be a minimal cap hit. It could be like a $6.5–7 million cap hit on the reasonable side in Detroit. And in doing so, there would be a much larger year two cap hit if he gets through that year successfully, with an out for the Lions. But if he is healthy, he will be missed, regardless of the money, regardless of whether or not Detroit's paying for part of a year and then a full second year if he sees a second year of that deal. He's going to be missed. The Bengals are going to get worse at that position. And maybe bringing DJ Reader back also means they get worse at that position, because we don't know what player he's going to be. He has been on record saying that it's a less severe injury. He's been through this rehab, obviously, but for that uncertainty, the Bengals made a decision that they weren't going to pay the money that Detroit paid. They were going to pivot, give that money to Sheldon Rankins instead, go a different direction on the defensive interior, and probably get a little bit worse there, at least in the things that DJ Reader could do. They're not going to have a guy that can two gap. Even if they sign Teair Tart, it's a different style of nose tackle. He's not the 330-pound guy who can toss a guy around and kind of bully his way into both A gaps, that kind of thing. So they're going to have to transform the way they play on the defensive interior. I think they get worse there without DJ Reader, but we'll see. There's still time for them to make moves, right? Like they can improve the depth on the defensive interior now. And that's what having three guys, if it's Tart, Rankins, and BJ Hill already on the team, plus maybe a draft pick, can do for you. And you're not as top heavy like they were with Reader and Hill, but maybe they add depth instead.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. And you're right. You're not replacing what he brought pre this injury. And I think that's the question mark. And it's going to be a question mark that we discuss probably all offseason. Even if they sign Tart, it's pretty simple. How will it look? And if they had signed Reader today, it would be the same. How's he going to look? How's he rehabbing? Will he be ready for week 1? Will he be ready for week 5? Is he going to start the year on pop? All of these things. And so it's one of the major off-season questions. And there's like one nose tackle that would project to be that Reader type guy. And I don't even know if they're in on him. We'll see in the draft, and T'Vondre Sweat. And so the defense is going to have to evolve. I think that's, and we'll get to Vonn Bell coming up. They're going to evolve a bit this year. And I think that's part of it. That's why they pursued Rankins and beat out Houston, who we know now was in on the 2 years, $12 million per year range, according to Aaron Wilson. The Bengals beat that out by going up to 13. And so they wanted Rankins. They wanted to bolster their interior pass rush. And I know they really like Teair Tart. They're probably working through some things. We can discuss that. But to me, Jake, I don't know about you. Much like I said, it's shallow at the draft. It is shallow now. This defensive tackle free agency class that's remaining, the guys that are out there, it's Tart. And then it's just a bunch of dudes that are just kind of hanging around waiting for their small deals. So Tart's got to be a high priority. That's why he's in the building.
There's some depth guys that I'd be totally fine with, depending on what kind of deals they get. The Quentin Jefferson, Jonathan Hankins tier. If they also get
He's
Tart
gone.
done.
Quentin Jefferson's gone.
Jefferson's gone. Okay. My sheet. Yeah, to the Browns. My bad. Out of date here. There's some guys like that, though, in that tier. Even Mike Dana from the Chiefs. Like, there's guys that could be that fourth guy if they wanted to continue to go and add depth and spend a little bit more on depth before the draft. And it wouldn't surprise to see them draft a 3-tech in the draft either, because there's some solid 3-techs in the second round. If it's not T'Vondre Sweat, they could just load up on other guys in the defensive interior and try to figure out a way to make it work. But it is unfortunate that the injury for Reader came at a terrible time, obviously. And his track record in Cincinnati was such that as a nose tackle, you're not playing a ton of snaps anyway, and he had some serious injuries. So that's where the Bengals' pause came from. I'm sad to see him go, James. He was, like I said, one of my favorite guys on the team. Was a joy to listen to him talk. Was a treat for me to get to talk to him before the Super Bowl that week when we were down in LA, and get to talk to him a little bit when he was on the podium. And I'll miss him. And the Bengals have to find a way forward without him.
Yeah, let's because I have a little more on DJ Reader, so let's get to that and much more, because we got to talk about Teair Tart, what he could potentially bring. We got to discuss the big offensive lineman that's currently in the building as well. So we will do all of that coming up next. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from retirement accounts with a 3% match. So no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Investing involves risk, and involves loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA is available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, a registered broker dealer.
James, you would like to add a note on DJ Reader before we talk about what appears to be the rest of the Bengals free agency plan, if we're being honest. But what do you got to wrap up the DJ talk?
Yeah, the thing that I'm going to miss that I like about DJ that will continue to like, he's a real one. He's going to be real with you all the time and be pretty. He's going to be himself on social media. He's going to be himself on social in the locker room after the injury. The fact that he talked to us at the end of the season, it was less than a month after his injury, and he's on crutches, and he spends 20 minutes with the media or whatever it was. Like, he's just himself, and usually people like that bounce back. And so don't be surprised if we see DJ Reader making waves and playing well. And I think that's a really good situation for him in Detroit too. So hopefully he crushes it there, and hopefully we're covering a DJ Reader reunion, so to speak, in New Orleans next year. That would be pretty fun, huh?
As long as it's not an Andrew Whitworth 2.0, Andrew Whitworth Redux. Let's come out on the other side of it this time. I did not enjoy covering a Super Bowl loss as much as I would have enjoyed covering a Super Bowl win. But it was a fun week, to your point.
Yes. I mean, of course. But, yes.
The rest of the Bengals free agency plan, in lieu of losing DJ Reader, is very much going according to chalk. Our what will they do free agency episode if the Bengals sign the guys in the building it's not like it was hard. I think a lot of people were on these guys, but is going to age pretty well with Teair, Tart, and Mekhi, Becton both visiting the Cincinnati Bengals on Thursday. Both of those deals wouldn't shock me if they both get done. Don't know anything about that. Just educated guess, I guess, speculative on my part. That's not informed, just to be clear. But both guys are guys we've connected to the team since, the waiver claim for Teair, Tart, the clear need if they couldn't get DJ Reader back for a guy who's comfortable playing nose, the need for a guy who could start at right tackle, has a connection to Frank Pollock. This has been loud since the combine. You talked about this yesterday, James, and could be a bridge kind of tackle. And that's probably, if they get those two deals done, the rest of the Bengals' significant free agency planning. I think there would be a couple of other moves, like we still haven't talked about corner too much, the low-level receiver kind of move, and some things like that could still be out there. But that would be the biggest areas we expected the Bengals to address, from the starting free safety, Mike Gesicki, to play tight end, the penetrating 3-tech, the nose tackle replacing the defensive interior, helping the starting right tackle. Those were the big areas that we talked about.
Yeah, for sure. And their vision makes sense, and that's why we talked about it, and it's lining up, and we'll see if they can get it done. I'm in on both of these guys, and there's some risk on both. But let's talk about Becton a little bit, because I think everyone's in on Teair, Tart and adding to the defensive front. I don't really know why you wouldn't be at this point, losing DJ in free agency. And I think, again, part of that is they picked the path of Rankins and Tart. I think that's when we talked about that on yesterday's show. I think they're picking this path, and we'll see if they can get it done. You never know. I was making sure, checking my watch there. You never know what is going to come down. But as far as Rankins goes, as far as Becton goes, I don't really see the downside here. They need, at very minimum, a backup swing tackle anyways. And so that's kind of the worst case scenario if you sign him. Or you could argue the best case scenario, because that means your draft pick comes in and plays well at right tackle. But to me, bringing him in, he's entering his prime, super strong, powerful offensive lineman, clearly works with Frank Pollock, worked well with Frank Pollock with the Jets. They have a good rapport. He's not 30. This isn't like La'el Collins. He does have injury questions. Mm-hmm. He's also not as proven as La'el was. And so the difference is maybe you get those proven years starting in 2024, and he can stay healthy in 2024. So they need someone. I'm in on Becton. I told you this. I've seen a lot of 1-year deals. I would offer him the Illuminor deal, the 2 years, $14 million, because worst case, he can be your swing tackle for both years if you can get him and get the most out of him, which I do think Frank Pollock is prepared to do.
And that's about what swing tackles get paid in the NFL. That's probably less than swing tackles will get paid in the NFL next year. If you look at some of the swing tackle deals around the NFL this year, that's not too far off. Illuminor certainly qualifies as one of those. There is upside with Mekhi Becton. Like you said, there's also a risk that he can't quite put it together, but people get caught up in the sacks allowed last year with Becton. The penalties, I think, are a problem. He had eight false start penalties, I think, at least. Most of those coming on the road in Dallas, on the road at Cleveland against some guys that are pretty good at getting off the ball, and Myles Garrett and why am I forgetting the name of Micah? Why am I forgetting Micah's last name? Parsons. Wow. Struggle bus.
Man, that was, as far as names go, that might have been your worst.
That was
really pretty
bad.
rough.
That was really bad. Micah Parsons, both of those guys forcing him to try to get a head start to get to his spot. So you'd want to see the false starts get cleaned up in silent count situations on the road, especially with one of those being against an opponent that the Bengals would face this year and Myles Garrett. But there is a lot of upside there. The power is there. He's very nimble for a man of his size. He ran a 5'1", 40-yard dash at 360 pounds. This isn't a lumbering athlete, but he is huge and he is very powerful. And if you could harness all of that, you could have a really good right tackle. But at the least, I think you have a guy that has solid experience in the league. If he's willing to play right tackle, he's done it in the NFL for 2 games last year and could be a bridge at the very least. And I think that's what you're looking at in free agency this year. There isn't a long-term starter available for you at right tackle in free agency this year.
No, you could have argued Jonah, I guess, right? That would have been the one that you could argue, but there isn't. There's no one available. Even the Jermaine Illuminors, the Trent Browns, that does not feel like it's the long-term. And that's why I'm in on Becton over Brown. And I think Brown would get around the same as Becton. I think Becton could be better. Could be. Now, is that a very low probability path going down? Maybe it's only 10% that it hits, but if it does, it's well worth it. And I do think that it's a tough situation. You always got to look at situations sometimes, right? And like Mike Gesicki, he's interviewed today, and he's like, I wanted to come here because Joe Burrow and they throw the ball in this offense. And he had about 52 quarterbacks in Miami. He went through all the quarterbacks, and it was like roughly 52 of them. And then obviously last year New England didn't go the way he hoped. And situations do matter, because I don't have any doubt that Mike Gesicki is talented. Mekhi Becton has talent, hasn't proven it in the NFL yet. And so if they get him done, I do think that there's upside there that we haven't seen. Health is always a factor, and we'll see if they can maximize it.
And how those injuries have impacted him, because he got off to an incredible start in the NFL. He did not hit a rookie slump the way you see a lot of tackles come into the league and struggle. He was really, really good as a rookie until he got hurt. And then
under Frank Pollock.
Under Frank Pollock, exactly. So if he can put that back together and the injuries haven't hampered him too much, there is upside there. The thing with Trent Brown, by comparison, you talk about an injury risk. He's played 3 full seasons out of 9 tries in his NFL career. And when he's been on the field, he's been a really good pass blocker. He's huge. He's had weight issues, but he hasn't been able to stay on the field. And so if you have that concern about Becton, you also have that concern about Trent Brown. There's also the age thing with Trent Brown, where he's older. Mekhi Becton's what, 25? He was really young coming into the league. So you have an age upside there as well. It would make sense. There's still risk there. If they sign Becton, I'm still thinking first round right tackle is plan A. But I don't know. I started talking myself, James, I told you this earlier. I started talking myself into the idea that they don't have to take a right tackle in the first round if they sign Becton. And I don't know if I believe that entirely, but I started talking myself into it.
Well, I think you make this move just in case someone falls that you don't anticipate falling. And there's the 8th player on your board and he's there at 18 and it's not an offensive tackle. Well, then you're like, okay, we can get one at 49 and at least we have a guy who's done it. So we'll see. but I think we're both on board. It makes sense. Low risk, potentially high reward. I would say low risk, medium reward with Mekhi Becton if they can get it done. But up next, the guy that they got done, he's back. We'll tell you who and how it got done coming up next. I said we'll tell you who, like you don't know that Vonn Bell is back, but Vonn Bell is back. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a one seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So throw $5 on, maybe you want to throw it on the NBA right now so you can get those $200 to use in the tournament. Will you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and get $200 on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all. And all you have to do is win your first $5 bet. Again, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets.
Before we go into Vonn Bell's return too much, is there anything else that we need to say about Teair Tart, or have we covered all the Teair Tart angles in the building? Like Mekhi Becton, different kind of player than DJ Veter in some ways, but most comfortable at nose tackle. Talked about depth. I think we covered everything there, right?
Yeah, I think the Bengals really like him as a player, and they're in on that element. I do think the meeting matters because of how last year worked. I also think that they might be able to find good value here in free agency because of how last year went down, and we'll see. But I think they're very much in on Teair Tart. So that said, they were very much in on the idea of getting Vonn Bell, Jake, for $1.2 million. That's stealing. And thanks to David Tepper, who guaranteed the second year of Vonn Bell's deal, Von's going to make like $6 million this year.
Yeah. And
the Bengals have him at $1.2 million, agreeing to terms. This has been in the works, agreed to terms on Wednesday night. And we talked about it a little bit on social and on our live stream and stuff, not here on Locked On. But yeah, overall, I think it makes a ton of sense to bring a veteran like that back, especially with the communication issues they had last year.
And we talked about it for our Locked On Bengals insiders, which you can join at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBengals. They knew about it first. I think
they did know about it first, like first. Yes.
At least as far as people who are getting their information from us. I'm sure some of you, maybe like a small handful, heard about it elsewhere. I don't know. People have sources, James. There's people in my DMs.
I've been sending the Vonn Bell stuff all week though. Like I was like, I think they're still in on him.
It's true.
Like it was, so there was just smoke there and they got it done. And I think we're going to hear from Vonn pretty soon. So that's good.
Today?
No, not today.
Okay.
Not today.
It would be great to hear straight from him what he expects his role to be. That is what is unclear about this. Is Vonn Bell and Geno Stone going to be the starting safety pair in 2024? Because when we first talked about this last night, I was sitting there thinking, like, he's not coming back to sit on the bench. He's 29. He's got an opportunity to play somewhere. Somebody would take that risk for $1 million. He's practically free. Somebody would take that. The Bengals took it. Of course they took it. They didn't want to lose Vonn Bell and Jesse Bates last year. And unfortunately, they've lost DJ Veter now, but to Lou Anarumo's chagrin, but at least they get Vonn Bell back and should go to the heart of their communication issues. But like I said when we were talking last night, James, in order to really help with those communication issues, I mean directly, he can help in the meeting room, he can help in practice all he wants, but he needs to be on the field. And so who's coming off the field? I don't know. That's such an interesting question where they add 2 safeties. And this is honestly a little bit frustrating. They add 2 safeties in free agency after spending a first and third round pick on a safety, and those guys played all of last year. I say frustrating because it's like they invested, and then now they're bringing in starting level safeties anyway. That's why it's a little bit frustrating. It's not frustrating that it should improve the team. That's good. But it is hard to figure out, and too bad that it couldn't just be Dax and Jordan Battle running with this thing this year.
No, and I don't think it will be. And I think to your point, look, Vonn's 29, going to be 30, and his mindset's pretty simple. It's play, show that he deserves another deal. You know, this is his last year. It's a 1-year deal. It's his last year to kind of show that he deserves a long-term extension. So we'll see, or deal somewhere, not extension, to be clear, but one more contract is what I'm sure he's thinking. Let's play here, for a contender, contend for a Super Bowl, and maybe win one, and then go elsewhere if needed and sign a big deal. But the point is, to your point, how does it work? How does it fit? And I think he's going to start. If I had to guess week 1 starter right now and predict it, I think it's going to be Vonn Bell and Geno Stone. I don't know for sure. A lot of things that could go into your point. Also, I agree with you asset-wise. That's why the 31st pick in the draft, Dax Hill, the 95th pick in the draft, Jordan Battle. I like playing the young guys and getting them up to speed, but I also think they're out on that idea completely, and their actions show it regardless. And they think that they're better today than they were a week ago, like much better in that area.
And we'll see what happens in camp. There's a chance that Jordan Battle can impress again and win time again. There's a chance that Dax Hill can impress again and win time again. There's a chance that it's Geno Stone and Dax Hill. Who knows? We'll see how it shakes out. As of today, the messaging from the Bengals and the actions from the Bengals, to your point, indicate that they were not happy with their safety play last year at all. And they've taken steps to try to remedy it.
Now, when I mentioned earlier in the episode that the defense is evolving, I do think that we're going to see more of a rotation. I think it would be doing Vonn a disservice to put him on tight ends, for example. He shouldn't really need to touch or get near Mark Andrews unless he's tackling him, right? He shouldn't have to guard him. And so, because you have Dax and you have really this quartet of safeties now that have their own special skill sets and can fit together. And so I do wonder if it's almost going to be Rubik's Cube light, where these guys do play and make it work. And it's interesting. I'm still trying to digest it and get a feel for what their plan is. But I think their plan is for Vonn to play, because if you're Vonn, you're not coming here to not play. Right, you're just not. Everyone was paying you $1.2 million. You would have found a job. But I think they said, hey, no, we can definitely get you on the field and come join a contender, and let's help these young guys. So I definitely think Vonn's going to play.
Theoretically, the mix and matchup specific safety deployment sounds great. But then you think about the issues they had last year with communication, and how much does a lack of continuity and consistency as far as who's playing safety helping you? I know that we'll still see sub packages where Dax Hill is going to go out there and defend in man coverage, most likely some tight ends. I think that's the one thing that they have circled for him, is his ability to man up tight ends. And we'll see what else they have in store for all these guys. But the practical application, when you think about the human element of taking guys on and off the field and using them in matchup dependent circumstances, is that not having consistency in terms of regular playing time could be detrimental to development. On the other side of that coin is if they have a very narrow scope and you're going to be used for this sort of deployment consistently, then you could really refine that part of your game. And maybe that's the theory, if they are going to go with that rotational kind of idea. Regardless of that, it would be very interesting to see how they use these guys, what Vonn Bell has to say if we get that kind of line of questioning as far as what he expects his role to be back with the Bengals, and how that went. When we hear from Lou Anarumo again, and maybe if we talk to, some of the guys in the Bengals front office about the vision for these moves, maybe that's an interview request I'll send in here shortly for Locked On Bengals. But it'll be interesting to hear the vision for this group of safeties.
And part of it, I don't think they came into this free agency period thinking, all right, we got to get 2 starting safeties. But when Vonn Bell is free, but I think that's circumstances change a bit. That doesn't mean you don't go get Geno, right? They really like Geno and they think he's going to be a big part of their defense, but he's free. I mean, they saved $2 million in cap cutting Nick Scott, and Vonn Bell's 1.2. I just think, thank you, David Tepper. Let's take care of that. So it might be that simple. There might be more to it. I do think Vonn plays. I do think Jordan plays, by the way, and Geno's certainly going to play. So what does Dax do? Maybe he does a little bit of everything, even though Lou said he needs to be good at one thing. I think it might be the opposite this year, is he does a little bit of everything for the Bengals. But they're certainly deeper, and I think more moves are coming, Jake.
Yeah, I think that more moves are coming as well. We talked about this possibility with the safety investment going into this week, where we looked at the safety market and said, boy, is that a loaded market. Boy, are there a lot of safeties out there. Boy, there sure aren't a lot of defensive tackles out there. And they found a couple of guys they wanted to target for the defensive interior, but we did sort of see this possibility, and we did talk about that last week. And so that has played out. Speaking of reunions, just a quick note that Hayden Hurst reportedly is signing with the Los Angeles Chargers. He will not be coming back for practically free like Vonn Bell did. I still thought that could have fit James, but instead, we'll see if they add another veteran tight end, if it's Tanner Hudson, Mitchell Wilcox, somebody else out there as a free agent. And this year, like the last 2 years, I'm going to say, I think they're going to draft one, but we can talk about the tight end position another time. And if we get some of these signings done, we might be back yet again tonight. We'll see if the Bengals make moves to reconvene James and I here on Locked On Bengals. Until then, thanks for listening to this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Hoo day, and have a good one.